type of city, the maritime port. Which also proliferated beginning in the 11th century. Maritime ports were different because of the speed of transport. Maritime ports that were famous: Venice, Genoa, Lisbon, Amsterdam, I'm going to place London here, even though I have truly no idea where it is in that rectangle. Antwerp, which is in today's Belgium. The cities forming the Hansa League, Hanseatic League. Cities like Hamburg, Leipzig, several of them. And these cities were connected in a non-hierarchical way. I'm just going to draw the connections from Venice. Venice was connected to Genoa, was connected to Lisbon, was connected to Antwerp, and I'm going to draw the other ones over here, was also connected with the Hanseatic League. A very different type of connectivity. I'm only showing the ones that come out of Venice, right? But the same thing would be true to Genoa. It's just that if I start drawing everything, it's going to end up a mess. Genoa was connected to Venice, but also was connected to Lisbon, was connected to London, was connected to Antwerp, was connected directly. There was not this system of relays, in which you go from one town to the next larger town. Sea transport was so much faster that in a very real sense, Venice was closer to Lisbon than it was to Florence, even though geographically, clearly, that is totally wrong. You know, there's only a few hundred kilometers between Venice and Florence. But if you're going to go by foot or by horse, well, your ship would get faster to Lisbon through the Mediterranean than that. So everything traveled faster through the cities. Money traveled faster, people traveled faster, news traveled faster, diseases traveled faster. We will see in another class how the bubonic plague used those ports. Well, not the bubonic plague, but the rats whose fleas carried the bubonic plague used those vessels to basically, in a few years, invade all of Europe. Had this system of maritime ports not pre-existed, the bubonic plague, which was in the 1300s, it would have never extended the way it did. Now, there's a big difference between these guys and these ones. In particular, maritime ports almost never bothered to develop their own culture. They were kind of gateways to the outside, in the sense that, I'm going to put North Africa here, including the Levant. The Levant was, of course, Islamic markets, which had access to the goods that came through the Silk Road. Basically, that was the end point of the Silk Road, and of course of the porcelains and silks that came from China. The Levant had all kinds of luxury goods, including spices from India into China and so on, that also arrived. And for the Europeans at the time, with Islam being superior, and I'm sorry I'm drawing this behind this, because probably nobody can see this anymore. Oops, now you cannot see anything. Yeah, you can see. But the fact that they were trading with foreign cultures meant that they were in contact with foreigners, unlike these guys, which were self-encapsulated in their own regions. This is why when you see a Gothic cathedral or a Gothic building in Paris, say Notre Dame, and then you go, well, that's Gothic. And then you go to Venice and see what they call Gothic. You go, oh, that's not Gothic. That looks Islamic. Because they were not developing their own styles. They put together styles from everywhere. They were perfectly comfortable with hybridity. Not only that, because after several centuries of commerce, communities of traders from different parts of the world would end up in those trading ports. And therefore, they had to be housed in different neighborhoods. The word ghetto actually comes from Italian, but from the Venetian dialect of Italian. Because it was in Venice, who was the dominant node in this network of cities in the first 500 years of the millennium. It was in Venice where they had to solve the problem of what to do with those Armenians, what to do with those Jews, what to do with those Turks, what to do with those Dutch people who came to form trading communities in the city. They put them in separate neighborhoods, which they call ghettos. Now, today the word ghetto, of course, means minorities of different ethnic backgrounds, but that was not its original intent, although it's similar. We're talking about ethnically relatively homogeneous neighborhoods. But that also meant that if you were born in Venice in, say, the 12th century, and you went out for a walk, you would be seeing people with turbans and robes, and different types of turbans and robes, and you would hear different dialects, and you became used to the idea of heterogeneity and diversity, because you confronted it every day. You were enriched in a way by that. Those cities were much more cosmopolitan, much less provincial, much less inward oriented, and much more with a vision outward. That was also partly contact with the sea. The sea allows that kind of outward vision. Being landlocked immediately forces you to think inward, although not necessarily, and it depends on transportation. We're going to see in another class that the moment the railroad was invented, these things will turn all upside down. Chicago, which is basically a landlocked capital, became a node in a network. The most important node in a railroad network. Well, Chicago is near the Great Lakes, so it also has some, not maritime commerce, that would be but waterborne commerce. But nevertheless, it was the railroad that made Chicago what it is, that made it less provincial, because being landlocked closes your mind, makes you think inward, whereas being by the sea makes you think outward. So many of the cities there will be characters in future narratives. Venice, Amsterdam, and so on were like that. London was kind of schizophrenic that way, and it continues to be schizophrenic to this day. London is in fact two cities. There's Westminster, which is very traditional, and is really the capital, and it's where the Queen and all the pomp and ceremony is conducted, and then the City of London, properly speaking, which to this day is an international financial center, and it has been an international financial center for centuries. Outward oriented. So London is schizophrenic that way. It's both capital and gateway to the outside. And that's perhaps what gives it its charm and what gives it its uniqueness. I'm going to be classing it among the cities in the network because ultimately, economically, that was its most important function.